I should have switched to fire for fire rack. No.
Oh, did you prog it as frost?
Yeah. But I think we were like a week away from killing the boss, maybe less. And I was like, fire has to be so good on this boss. But there were 0 public logs of fire at that point. And I was like,
I mean, who was public logging at that point? It was probably just like Gladrian on Frost and
Forgy.
That's about it. Forgy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get like a bunch of, not like no names, but like people you maybe don't think of when you think of logs. There's still going to be like a lot there. Especially for if people have killed the boss multiple times, which I guess maybe a lot of people hadn't.
I don't know. I looked at the logs for Fire Rack when we were getting to it, and I just saw the mages just completely miserable for all of P1 and going into P2, and I was like, fuck, this is gonna suck.
Yeah. One thing that was really nice for Frost, so Frost was, by the time we were killing the boss, my damage was really bad, but the way I lined it up was like you could ICV into the intermission, which wasn't great, and then you could ICV into both sets of ads. So we like progressed P2 really quick because we never had any like issue on the Infernals, because like we had 2 enhancement shamans plus me as a frost mage just absolutely shredded the ads like every time, and like it helped with like cage RNG and stuff like that if someone that did a lot of damage got targeted by a cage. And yeah. Okay.
Oh, shitty boss. We did a sale this week. We went into the non-awakened or whatever. We went into P3 at 12%. We still all fucking died to seeds.
Yeah, it's quite painful. You can at least quadra pop the seed on the first one, but you need the extraction button to pop up, so you can't just like pick them up and pop them. It's kind of sad.
We tried on awakened. We got them down to 6%, and then we fucking failed. So that's the last one I need for portals.
Have either of you done Vault this week yet?
Yeah.
Is it easy?
It wasn't hard. No, it was a pushover.
Because I was thinking we didn't do Razagath and we didn't do Dathia like 3 weeks ago, whatever it was.
We zero platform Dathia like it's a joke.
Class.
You zeroed it?
Yeah.
We did one, but I get the sensation we didn't need to. Those people did well on meters, but like they didn't. We could have redirected that to the boss and probably ended the fight sooner, that's for sure.
We dropped a healer and brought in another DPS and just zero platformed it. It was great.
That's
awesome. I'll try that. That probably also makes the marks really easy because it's just clear wherever the fuck you want.
Yeah. Just don't cap an ad, right? The end.
Yeah.
And then Razagath, like numbers wise, is a joke. It's just inversions and you're done.
Yeah, whenever we did it 3 weeks ago, I was thinking, people in my guild don't really play the game on farm, other than some people. And like, we got up to Razagath, skipping Dathia, and I was thinking like, wow, this raid would be so easy if we just had like 10 more item level. Like, yeah, which we will, so.
Yeah, we're basically done gearing now, so.
Yeah, we have... I've started leveling I have leveled my Demon Hunter and I've started gearing it, and it's now like the line for the the guild. It's like, right, to get invited to raid, you need to be higher item level than Toast Demon Hunter. 512.
Are you tanking raid or just for Mythic Plus?
I've only leveled it for Mythic Plus. We've got an interesting stack of multiple people playing off roles. I'm going to try and go for Mythic Plus title.
Break the meta with it.
Yeah, break the meta with Demon Hunter tank.
Telling you, man, Arcane is sleeper for fucking.
I said this
for keys this season.
Said those exact words in Discord about a week ago.
It's true.
Arcane is so fucking good.
I mean, Arcane was sleeper last season. This season, I think it's actually just flat out better. Like, I don't think it's an underdog that people are not putting stock into. I think it's actually just better this season.
Hopeful was playing around with it, and he sent me some of his logs. The only thing that really like sets it apart from like Frost or Fire is Og gets like 0 benefit from the Arcane. Like his Fire logs. It's just like the timing of it. Like his fire logs, he was gaining, or the AUG was like getting 200k off of him. His arcane log was getting like 80k.
I mean, I think you just have, as an AUG, you have to breath with Surge, right? And Siphon rather than just breathing off cooldown and not paying attention to your DPS, right?
Yeah, but then that gets awkward because what is it, a 2-minute cooldown trying to align it with the shadow and their PI and all that?
Yeah, it was awkward.
Yeah, I mean, it might be something you pull around. It's also possible too. So Hopeful is probably playing Temp Warp, which is definitely wrong in keys. You definitely play Time Anomaly to flatten your. Yeah, absolutely. It is dead even in single target with an AOE spec, and it is ahead in AOE with haste gearing when you're heavier on haste. But also it flattens the profile, which is a lot better when you go into keys, so you're not like empty when you go into some packs, right? You can get a Lust proc, you can get a Surge proc during your mini, shit like that.
Do you think that holds true even with like the high key routes where they're just pulling half the dungeon with Lust?
I mean, if you're doing that and you're getting PI with that, yeah, it's probably still true.
Wait. Okay, sorry.
I am also a Time Anomaly enjoyer for keys. It is a lot of fun.
I was thinking like the way you pull around Lost, I was like, there's no way.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like Brackenhide, you pull literally like everything in the first area and it's all done.
The thing you have to remember too about Arcane versus Fire, there's no haste scaling with like a spell that charges you, right? There's no haste scaling on Arcane Orb. There's no Fire Blast in the toolkit to be pumped up with haste beyond the global cooldown. Whereas Fire, you go above the GCD cap and you still get a benefit from haste because you're still getting CDR on Fire Blast, right?
That would be a fun change. Let's make a orb scale with haste.
Oh, definitely. It should. Flurry too, for that matter.
That could be the Spellslinger capstone. Arcane Orb now scales with haste.
I would dig it.
Right. Do we want to talk about Frost, or is this more interesting? Right. Someone on YouTube said that I should do intros because apparently some people find us nerds and don't know who we are. So I'll start off. I'm Toe Grinder. If you don't know me, I am a contributor to Mage Theory Crafting. I run the website MageHub, and I am the guild master of the Guild Mist on Taranmel EU. Porum, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm Porum. I am a staff member over at the Altered Time Discord, C Raider, and I write the Arcane Guide for Wowhead.
And I am Degen, raid with Bound on Zol Jin, staff member, Theorycrafter for Altered Time, and I help Toe out with some of the MageHub stuff.
Okay, sweet. So today we had planned to review Frost. I got up the master. Where is it? The master changes, right? And there were 6 bullet points for Frost over the course of the entire alpha so far. We opened up the tree and found that there was 1 extra node. So this episode might be shorter than our usual episodes, but we'll see what happens. So I was thinking we'll start with the Frostfire tree. I can just go down it like we did before. I'm thinking that there's probably a lot less to cover on it, so we'll cover it first. But yeah, the Frostfire mastery is damaging with fire spells, grants you 1 stack of fire mastery, and damage with frost spells grants 1 stack of frost mastery. Fire mastery increases your haste, and frost mastery increases your mastery, and it stacks up to 8. Adding stacks does not refresh the duration, and obviously this works with your Frostbolt becomes Frost Firebolt, which basically does both spells damage, has both spells effects, and gives you a stack of both Frost and Fire Mastery. So that's kind of the fundamental of the Frostfire tree. So yeah, starting in the top left, we have a choice node here: Imbued Warding, Ice Barrier, Cast Blazing Barrier, 25% effectiveness, and Meltdown. Melt slightly out of Ice Block and Ice Cold, allowing you to move slowly during Ice Block and increasing your movement speed. And both of these spells trigger a Blazing Barrier when they end. Porum, any opinions on this node? I'll just fill out the tree well.
I mean, I definitely think like imbued warding is the obviously correct choice in pretty much every situation, right? Even it's kind of weird that like Meltdown had an opportunity to maybe be like a counterplay pick for something like Warriors in PvP where they can break your ice block, maybe make it undispellable with that or something. Like I think that would be a good balanced pick. But as it is, I just don't really see any point to uh, moving slowly with ice block when you have hunters who can sprint with turtle up, right?
Yeah. Another thing is this applies to mass barrier, right?
So it did.
No, yeah,
Did they remove it?
in this latest
Yeah.
build, there was removed, and it was reduced from I think 20 to 15%, so or 25 to 15. So it was already caught some nerfs on the beta or alpha.
I think
rather.
it still shows as 25 though in the PTR spell data. So I think there might have been a patch note that said they changed it, but I'm not sure that they actually did.
It was actually data mining. I just pasted it in our chat too.
Ah, okay.
And in return for that change,
Yeah.
Ice Barrier has another 2% scaling with your health or verse. I forget which one it was.
I think it
Well,
was 2% on your health.
Yeah. Does this apply to yourself when you mass barrier? Or just when you cast a spell? Because you know the way there's a bunch of effects where they don't affect other people with mass barrier, but they affect you.
The health part applies to mass barrier. That's
No, I
how it
mean
works currently.
I mean the imbued warding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the fact that they removed it from the tooltip implies that it probably won't, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know if that changes on alpha yet, so I'm not sure if we can test it.
Do you have alpha yet?
I don't.
Yeah,
Forum
I'm in.
does.
Yeah, Porum does.
I can log in here.
Big man loves it. Right. Okay, moving across, we have Elemental Affinity. So reduced cooldown of fire spells, or you can take Flame and Frost, which Cold Snap reduces the cooldown of your fire spells. So the way this tree works is, obviously, you get access to it as Frost and Fire, and usually these things are flipped. So like for Fire, this reduces cooldown of Frost spells. I think this is a lot better for Frost than it is for Fire. Like as Fire, you're basically like reducing the cooldown of like Piss spells, whereas for Frost, you're reducing the cooldown on Dragon's Breath and Blast Wave. The only two fire spells, right?
Yeah. Last time we did this episode, someone did mention ice flows for fire, so that is a pretty big value button. You get 30% more ice flows throughout the fight. But as far as like Mythic Plus, having Dragon's Breath and Blast Wave on a 30% reduced cooldown is absolutely nuts.
Oh, you do have Fire Blast as Frost. You get that and reduced cooldown.
Oh yeah, make sure you bind that to everything.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
We cast it in. When did we last? What was that? The triple spell legendary and
Fevered Ink. No, I'm thinking of something else.
Shadowlands.
Deems. we joked around and called it Deems something, right? Because we had the weak aura with Deems face on it.
Yeah, the cast one spell.
Disciplinary something. Yeah,
Disciplinary
there we go.
command. Yeah.
Yeah.
I.e., I'm counterspelling to activate my burst.
Yeah. So you never know. I mean, looking the way the Frost tree is going, I would not be surprised to see disciplinary command show up in the Frost tree.
I would rather that than some of the things they just added.
Yeah. Okay, Frostfire Infusion, Frost and Fire spells have a chance to trigger another Frostfire Bolt, which gives you a stack of your masteries, so it's kind of whatever. Then we have Severe Temperatures. Casting Frost or Fire spells increases the damage to your next Frost Firebolt by 6%, and then it stacks up to 5 times. And then Frost Firebolt's cast time is reduced by 10%. I think as Frost, there's no way you're not just taking the cast time. Frostbolt's like so important to your rotation.
It is, but they already play that dangerous game with haste, where when they're in their like cooldowns, icy veins rolling and temporal warp going, you're already like borderline there. So they might end up taking that 6%, just flat damage.
So
no temporal
just
warp,
to report,
Sorry, what was it?
I said we don't have temporal warp, so
Sorry,
it's,
lust. You know what I mean?
yeah. But I mean, it goes from being something that happens once every 10 minutes from like happening, well, like four times every 10 minutes. It does matter a bit.
Yeah. But like as a baseline, I think Frost does benefit a lot from this tree, just because they are using their filler spell more than Fire does. So I think they're really going to enjoy getting to see Frostfire Bolt more, compared to Fire, where apparently the goal is to never press Fireball.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting as well is like Frost wants to press its filler, whereas like Fire presses its filler because it has to. So like whenever you're doing damage as Fire, you're not pressing Fireball, which isn't the case for Frost. It's another thing to keep in mind. Sorry, what did you say? What were you saying for him? Before?
I was going to say on Alpha right now, Mass Barrier doesn't even give the mage casting it the fire barrier, so it's just your barrier, and that's it.
Boo. Hit it. Oh well. Right, moving on.
I mean-
this is... Oh, go ahead.
I would say it's still a free 15% barrier. Can't complain about that.
Yeah, barrier's already great. It's a shame it's the two bad barriers. So, Isothermic Core, Comet Storm now calls down a Meteor at 100% effectiveness on your target's location, and Meteor now calls down a Comet Storm. For some reason this has both things on the tooltip. So, Comet Storm calls down Meteor. What do you think here, DJN?
I mean, this is hands down the coolest spell in this tree. It just looks sick when you CMS. And with like the whole Coldest Snap deal, like on Tendril Roots, you're going to CMS Meteor, Cone of Cold, and then CMS Meteor again. That's just insane burst damage in a very small window. So it's pretty sick. I really enjoy it.
The aesthetics of it are really awesome too. Just the timing. So for people who aren't aware, after you cast Meteor, there's a 1 second delay, and then the meteor appears in the sky and then falls. Comet Storm has a similar delay, but it's shorter. And the way it actually times out visually is that all of the Comet Storm hits land, and then the meteor plops in behind them. And it's just a really gratifying visual effect.
The downside to that, though, with that whole delay, is your first meteor should get shattered by your Cone of Cold, but I don't think the second meteor will hit within that WC window.
Yeah, it'll probably be something that you want to make sure that you have your pep freeze for, or a follow-up Ice Nova or something like that to catch it with.
Yeah, your Ice Nova.
Yeah.
Let's be real, you'll still take it.
It's like Winter's Chill 6 seconds, right? I mean, I'll believe you, but it seems interesting that it doesn't land in the window. That's how long Winter's Chill is. But yeah.
I want to say so Meteor is hasted. So the fall time on it depends on if you have like Luster or Icy Veins or something like that rolling, it will come down quicker. But I think unhasted, it will hit right outside that window.
Okay, interesting. Haste will also like make you cast reduce the time between the Cone of Cold and the Comet Storm. But yeah, I guess we'll find out when we have non-alpha haste. Okay, coming down in the tree, we have two talents called Excess Frost and Excess Fire. So they work quite similarly. So when you reach max stacks of Frost Mastery, your flurry will cast Ice Nova, and whenever you consume Excess Frost, the cooldown of Comet Storm is reduced. And Excess Fire is when you reach maximum stacks of Fire Mastery, your next Ice Lance will apply Living Bomb. And whenever that Living Bomb explodes, you gain Brain Freeze. So obviously you're going to be getting Excess Frost quite a lot in comparison to Excess Fire. Does the Meteor... No, never mind. I was thinking of Fire Mastery. Ignore me. Yeah, what do you think here, Porum?
Just procs that you'll get from doing your rotation right. You know what I mean? I don't think it's anything that you'll necessarily think about. And it's a kind of similar deal with Fire, right? Where these procs are triggered by core rotational abilities, so you can't not use them, right? It's not something that I think you're gonna bank and play around. And I don't think it's gonna add a whole lot of mental tracking to the rotation. Maybe at the highest levels, you know what I mean? You might hold off on using your flurry or something to save this proc for like a big pull coming up. But I think by and large, people are just gonna send it as they come. So it should be kind of like a good visual indicator that you're doing the rotation right without a whole lot of mental bandwidth invested in it.
The nice part about this is that it's completely passive. The downside to it, though, is it's adding another friction point for Frost Mages, especially in Mythic Plus, because now it's another quote-unquote uncontrollable freeze that they're going to do. So when a tank's trying to kite something, or you're trying to do like a knock-up or a knock-back to like interrupt something, you're going to be rooting it because you flurried, which is kind of annoying. There's been some like talk in Altered Time about like having a toggle, so instead of like rooting or snaring your targets, it just applies like a Winter's Chill type debuff where it becomes shatterable, but it doesn't actually impede their movement. I think that's something that they really need to do for Frost in like current day WoW, because that social aspect of constantly rooting things really pisses off pugs for whatever reason.
Yeah, I was going to say Ice Nova is a weird spell to choose for this because like. I know it's buffed by 200%, but I feel like if you're buffing it by 200%, you need to reevaluate what spell you're putting here. But I suppose, like, what are the other options? There's already too much Comet Storm stuff floating about. But it would be, like, a decent option. It's maybe too good.
It would be a decent option mechanically, but you already have a Comet Storm proc in the tree, right? In the spec tree on top of the Meteor bit as well.
Yeah.
I don't mind Ice Nova. I think maybe they should rethink how the Ice Nova snare works in general, and instead of having it be a free, have it be like sorry, instead of a freeze, have it be like 100% slow that tapers off, kind of like how I forget the old monk slow that used to exist that was like that. But I think something like that, like a toggle option, right, Degen, to go from a solid freeze to like a slow that tapers off. Would definitely be an appreciated change. Or let's be real, just get rid of the freeze entirely and just have the slow that tapers off. It functionally is the same.
I think like the identity of Frost means we want those freezes to stay around, and also we don't want PvPers showing up at our doorstep with knives. So like I think they want their freezes. But I do think that for like the health of the spec and like its viability and pushing high content, it should be something that's like toggleable.
Yeah.
And also the whole Comet Storm is reduced by 5 seconds. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out because you want every other Comet Storm to be in that Cone of Cold window in AoE. So that might get a little awkward. Like it might just be useless CDR in AoE. In single target, it won't matter. You'll be able to send it as you normally would, but it might get a little awkward timing wise.
Yeah, I suppose you've just got enough stuff to just shatter it anyway. I know you kind of want it with Winter's Chill, but or kind of cold, but still.
No, your point's apt though. Like the Frost cooldown kit kind of all syncs itself, right? Everything is kind of at that 30-second mark to reset, and having that get shortened oddly is definitely a weird choice. The brain freeze proc from Excess Fire is also something to definitely note on that as well, because you know that Frost with Frostfire looks like it's just going to be swimming in Winter's Chill a lot of the time because of this proc.
Yeah. Okay. Getting on to Frostfire Empowerment. So this is kind of our big thing. Frost and Fire spells have a chance to activate Frostfire Empowerment, which causes your next Frostfire bolt to deal double damage, explode in an AoE, and grant maximum benefit of Frostfire Mastery and refresh its duration. And the last talent is basically press your major cooldown and you get this buff. I kind of just thought this was just like random damage buff, who cares? I'm kind of worried now that this is almost like too good. Like this is like to be just completely RNG. I might be like overthinking it, but I think if this like procs at a good time, like procs at low stacks because it like sends you to high stacks, or procs at low duration or something like that, it seems like it could be quite high variance between like when it actually procs.
My concern with it isn't necessarily like the RNG factor of it. It's with the other things they're adding to Frost and the synergy that this would have with those effects. Just slamming Frostfire Bolt on GCD, I feel like it could get pretty out of hand pretty quickly.
Yeah. Porum, any thoughts on this before we move on to the next tree?
No, I'm with Degen. I think with how Dust Chill and Fractured Frost are going to work in the future, I think this tree becomes problematic for Frost now. Especially this proc is kind of an issue too, because you're randomly going to get instants where you could move, but you probably don't have much time to react to them to actually, get any value out of that movement. And then additionally, like, you're just even further incentivized to just spam Frostbolt constantly, and the fact that it cleaves and you're going to get 3 stacks of mastery for each type of mastery every Frostbolt cast. It's really going to get degenerate, I think.
Yeah. We'll get on to that. Okay. Spellslinger, our favorite tree. Let me just fill this out with random stuff. Okay. Starting at the top, we have not icicles. We have frost splinters. So whenever you consume Winter's Chill, you conjure a frost splinter that fires at your target, not an icicle. So it's basically a sharp projectile that deals damage, not an icicle. And they embed themselves in your target, dealing frost damage over 16 seconds, and this stacks. And then basically everything interacts with these in some way. So whenever we cast Icy Veins, we conjure 8 Frost Splinters, and during Icy Veins, whenever you conjure a Frost Splinter, you have a 100% chance to conjure another Frost Splinter. Anyone want to jump in with their opinions on not icicles? I know this tree's not very exciting, but...
We said from the beginning, when Porum and I were looking over the arcane version of it, that this tree lives and dies by its visuals, because this entire tree is just passive, not icicles, the entire time. And after seeing it on Alpha, I think they may have missed the mark on that visual aspect, because they are icicles. They are, in fact, icicles. There are some very great diagrams that both Porum and Nori have posted in Altered Time showing what they could be and some of the travel paths they might take, but as they stand right now, they are icicles. And they have just as much excitement in them as icicles.
No, I think they have actually less, because icicles at least interact with your stats to some degree, right? I think this is the most boring hero talent tree of all of them that I've seen. There's little to no interaction with anything in your toolkit. It's literally just do the things you are already doing, and you'll get more damage. A couple of things to note is just like Frostfire, Splinter Storm. I know we haven't gotten there yet, but it does add Winter's Chill to the target. So in the process of generating icicles by spending Winter's Chill, you'll get some free ones. I think both of these trees maybe give Frost a bit too much free uptime on Winter's Chill. But then also, this tree, I mean, there's one talent that interacts with like another spell in your toolkit, and that's Unerring Proficiency. And for Arcane, it's kind of interesting because you weren't using Supernova before. But it's Frost, you were already using Ice Nova. It doesn't really give you a huge incentive to treat the spell differently than you already were. I think the one thing I will note after playing this a bit on Alpha is the not icicles do they updated the graphics for them, and they do look a little bit more distinct from the actual icicles. But like Degen said, I think the animation for how they, how your character projects them into the world is just very lacking. They're like right over the top of your character, just like icicles. They fly they don't go straight to your target. They kind of bend a little bit, but not hugely different. And while you're casting Glacial Spike, you actually can't even see the storm when it procs, because Glacial Spike is so big above your head already. I think in general, and I've heard a couple people say, the animation should appear to your sides or something like that, or, I recommended maybe they appear in like a circle, kind of like the Jaina cast animation when she casted her Frost Ray in Battle of Dazar lore. But I think in general they definitely missed the mark. like the hero tree doesn't have a good theme. It doesn't have good animations, and it doesn't have any intrigue as far as how the mechanics of it work. So it kind of struck out for me.
Yeah, we'll get on to it in a sec. So I'll read out these last two in the first row and then give my thoughts. So whenever a target is under the effects of Blizzard, 20% of the direct damage dealt by not icicles is dealt at an AoE. And then enemies damaged by your Frozen Orb conjure a not icicle up to 4, and Frozen Orb damage is increased. So yeah, boring as hell. This middle row is all utility? I guess the right side.
No. Yeah, the right side's the DPS one, which I think Volatile Magic, it's not much damage, but it doesn't require you to take any extra points or use any extra GCDs differently.
Yeah, so whenever a not icicle is removed, it explodes AoE damage. Great. And then each time you conjure a not icicle, you increase the damage of your next Ice Nova, which stacks up to 60 times. I hate these obscene stacking buffs. I hate the other one. I hate the cold one as well. I don't think people play that much anymore. But yeah, these two, I was going to say, are completely busted. So I'll start with the middle one. So Reactive Fire. Ice Fire absorbs 50% more damage based on your missing health. So that's like 100 to 50, I think, by reading the tooltip. So once you're at 50% health, like you're at max effectiveness on that. Then Mirror Image summons one extra clone, doesn't matter, but it reduces all your damage taken by an additional 5% busted.
So that phantasmal image isn't as busted as you would think, because in the alpha changes this week, they reduced mirror images baseline by 5%, so it's now down to 15 reduction while it's active. So they gave us the Walmart sale special where they mark something up for a week and then drop it down on sale. So now to get the full effectiveness that you currently have with mirror images, you can take this talent.
Ironically, nerfing fire in the process, right?
Yeah. One thing I was thinking, like, I talked about this in a previous show where, like, mage survivability is so polarizing depending on, like, the damage you're taking. Like, if you're taking, like, one-shot damage, like, mage survivability is completely broken, but, like, rot damage, you just, like, flop. I was looking at this and being like, wow, this plugs the rot hole really well, but I guess not.
No, but I think Reactive Barrier does, though. Like, Reactive Barrier is something that you can regularly take advantage of. You know what I mean? At low health in rot situations where you can, like, time it right, you know? The odd thing about that, though, is we kind of use Alter Time in the same way. And then also, I haven't checked it yet, but I really want to know if Reactive Barrier works on Mass Barrier. Like, if that health modifier is done within the formula of Barrier, or if it's done as an addition outside of Barrier and only affects yours. So that'll be interesting to see in the future.
Yeah, Alter Time is... sorry, I was just going to say, Alter Time isn't always good against rot because it's in this weird spot where you want to use it on high health, lose enough damage or lose enough health over the duration that you can then alter back up. But like sometimes against rot, you're not at high health, and then you might not lose enough health over the duration for it to be like that good. Again, it goes into like you want to use it, take a big spike of damage, and then heal it back. But like you have like 20 spells to deal with spiky damage.
Yeah, I think of what's it called, Iridicron in Galakron's Fall, right? Where he hits you 3 times when you get targeted with the AoE ability that gives, you get hasted afterwards or whatever. I think of situations like that where like this would be either very good or either bad, depending on when the healer's heal lands. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it could be really chancy as well.
No, I have a very good healer friend that I do all my dungeons with, and he'll literally tell me, hey, I'm topping you, alter now, and you're on your own, good luck. And I love that, but in like pug scenarios, it's really hard to like maximize the value of alter like that.
Yeah.
The weird thing about reactive, at least in like high content, like Mythic Plus, you're preparing for damage incoming because it's all very predictable. So you're burying at high health, probably laying it with mirror images or something, some other little piss defensive to survive like a big hit coming. So like all the times you're going to be dropping below that 50% like threshold, you've already pressed barrier, so you're not really going to get value out of that in like a coordinated setting. You're not going to be sitting there, all right, I'm going to take this big hit and go down to 1% and then barrier. That just doesn't make sense. But in raiding, this could be sick.
Yeah, it also could change how you pace your cooldowns in that kind of situation too, right? Like, for example, the mage boss at the second to last boss of EB, right? Everbloom, where you get ticks of fire damage, you're kind of low, and then the healer has time to top you. That's easily a situation where you could, like, maybe greater invis the tick damage, and then barrier at low health to prepare for the next tick damage a little bit down the road, right? So it could change how you think about your cooldowns in that regard.
Yeah. Then I was just thinking, like, it is actually pretty good against Rot. Just like, that's what we do against Rot anyway, just slam barrier and cooldown, but it just makes that better.
I would really appreciate reactive barrier right now because I have the degen special, which is where I get slammed with a frontal on fire rack, and then barrier because I have the debuff on me and I refuse to dwarf. So that would be nice.
Okay, slippery slinging, 40% movement speed during alter time, and then displacement has a 50% longer duration and 25% longer range. I don't know what my displacement keybind is. I'm gonna be honest.
I mean, when was the last time it was seriously used? Like very early Raz progression before the winds got nerfed?
I didn't even use it there. Yeah, the spell's so bad when alter time is the game.
You just didn't need it on Raz because Blink or Shimmer Alter Time were like good enough to plug the wind hole. You could alter every other wind and gateway the other ones in between. It was just, you had it covered, right? It was kind of redundant. Until they added the heal to displacement, I never even considered it as like an option to go to for anything. The alter time thing though is actually insane quality of life. Like, you remember Invis Sprint? It definitely, it's not as fast as that was, right? Because it's 40, not 80, but it feels good. It definitely feels good to like pop alter, do a ton of running indoors, and then just cancel alter and have, you know, that sprint button for it.
I'm even thinking think Naimu or whatever you want to call her. Like you want to get the bomb as far out as you can, so you pop alter, blink out, and then jog a little bit. Now you got 40% increased distance on that. Yeah, that's a very cool talent.
I feel like there's like different types of movement. There's like, you get your blink type of movement. There's like things that don't increase your movement speed, but like help you deal DPS while moving. So like Affliction Warlock, you can like refresh dots while moving. And I feel like Mage is just trending towards having literally everything in that department at this point.
I'm not complaining.
No, I'll not complain either, but it's interesting.
I really struggle when I log on my alts and I don't have Blink or Shimmer or whatever. Like, I don't know how to move out of mechanics. Like, I have to hold W. What do you mean?
Yeah, I've always altered a Warlock, so I've stayed humble. Although then I log back on my Mage and be like, oh, I don't have Dark Pact, because that button is insane.
I have to hit buttons to live? What is this?
Yeah, luckily we have a lot of them.
Yeah. Not complaining we have a shortage, but man, is it sometimes feel a little cluttered when you're like, all right, which of my 8 buttons do I hit here and there, and optimizing it gets a little messy.
Yeah.
And it is kind of one note on this row in general is like, it's kind of interesting how much Spellslinger misses on the mechanics when it comes to your rotation and how you interact with like damage. But the utility talents on this are really interesting. They've got a lot of value here that I think challenges the other trees in that regard. So it'll be especially disappointing to see the splinters in action.
Yeah. Okay, shifting shards. My least favorite spell in the game fires a barrage of 8 not icicles at random enemies within 40 yards over its duration. Sure. Direct damage from not icicles has a 5% chance to summon Icy Comet. Deals damage and increases their damage taken by 6% for 6 seconds. Is this not like already in the Frost tree?
It is, but they copy pasted it. Here it adds percent damage. Totally different, though. Totally different, right?
Oh, our regular one doesn't. Does it not?
It used to be, I think Glacial Assault had the damage modifier on it or something, where when they hit, it like created a small damage window. I think that might be gone now. Or no, it's still there. Glacial Assault,
Oh, yeah.
6%.
Yeah.
I thought it was unique. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so it's literally just a copy paste.
That's
I think
got to
the
be.
I think the difference here is instead of multiple comets coming down and stacking or refreshing or whatever, you get a singular one comet on a 5% proc. Have fun.
That's what Glacial Assault does. It's a single comet,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yep.
Does the single comet apply the damage increase? I'm now looking at the Glacial Assault tooltip, and it's actually not clear.
I think the way Glacial works right now is each comet applies that singular debuff, but then each comet refreshes it. So you get like an extended duration of it.
No, Glacial Salt is a proc that calls a comet. It doesn't. I don't think it affects. Oh no, your Comet Storm now increases the
Yeah,
damage.
but it says Comet Storm. It doesn't say Comet.
Yeah. So it's okay.
Doing thorough investigation here to see if Blizzard have literally copy and pasted a talent.
It definitely feels that way. Instead of a 25% chance on Flurry, it's a 5% damage, or 5% chance on Splinters, right?
Yeah.
Feels kind of copy pasted to me.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize the 6% was on the main Comet Storm. I thought it was on the proc itself.
What's really weird about this tree, and I think I'm just now realizing it, especially for Frost, is how much AoE focus there is. Like you have a node that's like when Blizzard's down. Well, you're not doing that on less than 2 targets currently, or 3. You have one that's Frozen Orb, which you do use in single target, but when you're really pumping those out is in AoE when you get that reduced CDR. You have your least favorite spell now fires off a bunch of splinter things. Like that's kind of AoE focused. Like there's a lot of AoE going on in here.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like a couple of years ago Frost was really behind in the AoE department, but I don't think that's the case anymore.
The weird thing is there's a lot of AoE things going on here, but at the very same time, Arcane blows it away for Splinter generation in AoE. When you get Orb Barrage procs, the orbs proc the same number of orbs as Frozen Orb, except you don't have to Blizzard a bunch of times and get CDR to cast it, right? You also consume Nether Precision now in AoE. Like playing on Alpha, you definitely like it blows it away as far as Splinter generation in AoE goes for between Frost and Arcane.
Love to hear it.
So hates Frost confirmed.
Yeah.
Man, I would like Frost so much more if they just deleted Ray of Frost. I was so sad when Ebenbolt got killed instead of Ray of Frost.
I don't mind Ray. I really like Ray, especially in Mythic Plus, because I can like drop like Chain Reaction and pick that up, and now I have the spell where I can sit there and hit my vape and just do massive single target damage. Like it's great.
Yeah, adjusting my glasses during Sun King's Blessing procs.
I wouldn't mind Ray if they updated the spell graphic for it. It looks like it's 2003. Like it doesn't even look like when it doesn't even look as good as spells that we used in 2004 in this game. It's definitely lagged behind in that department.
Where's the Jaina animation?
My issue with Frost in general is like it feels like it has too many buttons and too little interaction. Like there's a lot of buttons that you just press when they're off CD, and it's like, okay, cool. But like it doesn't feel like there's enough like
I think
going
my
on
big
together.
My big issue with Frost right now is I feel like I'm always munching procs, which as like a fire main, like I don't want to munch procs. Like that feels really bad to me. Like that is like the antithesis. And I had a stroke. That is the complete opposite of what I want to do, and I'm just sitting there watching my Frostfinger things just go to waste.
Yeah, like a guy in my guild was, we were just memeing about it on Discord after raid like 2 weeks ago, and he was playing Frost for the first time in a key. I was like watching a Discord stream, and I was like, right, I know there are like 2 big massive strips in your eye being like, you have Fingers of Frost, use these, but that's like your lowest priority thing. And it just doesn't feel right. I was thinking it might be quite controversial, but like what with so much Winter's Chill generation, like what place does Fingers of Frost still have in the game? I know it's necessary for like cleaving, but like on single target it doesn't feel like it should be there.
To be fair, the same check that happens with Fingers of Frost when it checks for splitting ice target could be checked when you cast it against the target with Winter's Chill, right? I think that's something they could build in there if they wanted to get rid of Fingers of Frost, and I kind of agree. There's a lot going on in the Frost toolkit that all basically summarizes in use all of your CDs off CD with Winter's Chill up, right? And it's not particularly interesting having that many buttons that you just use in the same way, right?
Yeah, I think that's my that and Fingers of Frost are my probably 2 biggest issues with Frost right now. I really liked. I feel like early BFA Frost was in a good spot. So for people who didn't play early BFA, it would have been quite similar to now, except no Ray of Frost. You would have had Ebon Bolt instead.
Did we even play Ebon Bolt? I feel like we might have just played Comet Storm and Glacial Spike. I don't remember, but I feel like Ebon Bolt might have died after Legion for a while.
Did you not play it? Because wasn't there shit in Uldir where like you Ebon bolted at 5 icicles if you didn't have Brain Freeze, but then you didn't use the Brain Freeze on Ebon Bolt, you then used it for Glacial Spike?
I think you're right, actually. Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
But like, I think that's like an interaction. Like, I like that better than should this spell into Winter's Chill? Should this spell into Winter's Chill? Like, it's like using your spells together to like accomplish something, I think is a lot more interesting than hit all these buttons when they light up. Comet
Storm also hit like an absolute truck back then too. Like Comet Storm freeze combos were just decimating things in Uldir. Decimating the tiny odds at the start of the bug dungeon. Boss spawn. Yeah.
Frost and padding on small ads, that would never happen.
Yeah. Looking at you, Gladrian, you know?
Never in my life have I done this. Okay. We're reviewing our last Not Icicles talent, I believe. Yeah. Right. Which might be the only thing that's remotely interesting. So whenever you have 8 or more Not Icicles, you automatically cast Not Comet Storm at your target. So Not Comet Storm, shatter all Not Icicles, dealing their remaining periodic damage instantly. Conjure a Not Icicle for each Not Icicle shattered, then unleash them all in a devastating barrage, dealing damage to your target for each Not Icicle in the Not Comet Storm. Not Comet Storm applies Winter's Chill to its target. That's a lot of text to say big explosion.
So when Porum was writing his article for the Arcane side of this, he kept mentioning that he wanted this to be an active button, and at the time I was like very, very opposed to it because I was thinking from like Frost POV or even Arcane, there's a lot of buttons to press. But like for Spellslinger as a whole, I think this needs to be an active button to give this tree literally any seasoning, flavor, whatever you want to call it. Because everything in this tree is completely passive. It's a 5% proc on a proc, and you shoot your Not Icicle. This needs to be a button, or this is the most bland tree in existence.
Are there any actives in the other trees?
Not really, no. But
no, Mage is pretty much all passives.
Is there the other trees in non-main trees or non-mage trees?
I think the Demon Hunter one.
Okay, so there is a precedent.
They basically. Yeah, there's like a case-by-case basis. I think they went through these and were like, hey, this spec is too complicated. We can't add any buttons here. You know what I mean? And I think all 3 mage specs ended up in that basket, right?
Yeah, but I get what you're saying, but then we were literally just talking about how Frost has too many buttons that you just press without really thinking already. Which means...
Well,
Go on.
Here in the near future, when it is nothing but Frost Bolts, they're going to want another button to press, and I think Splinter Storm is a great opportunity for that.
They have buttons, they just won't be pressing them. Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be a really good thing for Frost if Splinter Storm weren't active for them. And honestly, the rate at which you generate splinters and how long the dot is, it might actually be a little disruptive if it were casted. That's kind of the vibe I've gotten playing it on alpha so far. I do agree though that for Arcane specifically, the removal of Spark and Nether Tempest, especially for Spellslinger, feels like the rotation feels hollow. It needs something in there to season it, and I think Splinter Storm would be a great button there. But I do worry about adding it for Frost because of you already have Ray and Glacial and Comet Storm. You have all these buttons that you hit like in every kind of situation, right?
Yeah, I can see both sides of it. I'm comparing this tree for Frost to Frostfire for Frost. And while Frostfire is also very passive and there's not much going on in it, it's at least like very visually impressive. It has like thematic reasons that people have wanted in the past. Like this one just doesn't hold.
Yeah, the splinters need to be like 3 times as big, and they need to like have a trajectory that is recognizably different from everything else you're doing in your toolkit. Because right now, it just doesn't feel like you're doing anything different from Dragonflight as Frost right now.
Which, blessing and a curse, I think this is what Frost currently have is maybe the best iteration of Frost, as far as like a cohesive like spec.
If they delete it, right?
If they delete it, right? Like, I really enjoy Glacial Spike. I really enjoy not doing the 2-finger combo. It has like adaptability for different situations. Like it's a really, really solid spec. And you can see that because Frost and Fire are getting gutted and reworked and all this, and Frost has gotten 5 lines in the development notes. Which I think Toe is heading into right now.
Oh, I was going to look at the tree first. We could look at the notes. Okay. Yeah, I guess the notes make sense. So, you may be thinking this is the Frost changes in a build. No, this is all of the Frost changes in alpha so far. So, new talent, Death's Chill. While Icy Veins is active, damaging an enemy with Frostbolt increases spell damage by 1%. Fractured Frost has been redesigned. While Icy Veins is active, your Frostbolt hits up to 2 additional targets. Hailstones is now a 1-point talent. Fractured Frost and Freezing Winds have swap places in the talent tree. Cold Front and Cold Snap have swap places, and Icefire's Absorb is increased. So showing you what that actually looks like in the tree. So Cold Front is now here. Coldest Snap is here. Freezing Winds is here. Yeah, so these two lead into each other on live, but they're just over 1, and these two lead into each other. And then we now have this talent here, which is down from Slick Ice, so that there's now like 5 down at the bottom. And I think the rest of the tree is the same, other than this being a 1-pointer. No, this is a 1-pointer on live. This being a 1-pointer.
Yeah.
And not only is it a 1-pointer, it's like the 1 point gets you what 2 points did before. It's not just like a cut one of the points off.
Yeah, they were just freeing up a talent point so you can take Death's Chill or whatever you want down there with Freezing Winds getting moved.
So if anyone didn't play Shadowlands, Fractured Frost was part of Deathborn, and Death's Chill was part of the Deathborn Legendary. So how that worked was you pressed Deathborn, you pressed Icy Veins, and then you just pressed Frostbolt over and over again until Icy Veins ended, because this increases your spell damage whenever you Frostbolt. This makes Frostbolt cleave. They like work off each other, so if it cleaves, you get 3 stacks. This also works with Frostfire, so like the Frostfire bolt will triple stack both sets of the mastery. So I don't know how they've looked at Frost, like previous iterations of Frost, and thought, you know what we need? Press Frostbolt for 40 seconds straight. Yes. Anyone else want to rant, or are we all just like demotivated ranting about Frost at this point?
No. So on the bright side, IP is dead and gone. RIP, rest in piss. So like that part of the equation's not there. And we don't have the Deathborn conduit, which randomly extended you for a minute and a half on some pulls of just being in that Deathborn window. So it's not going to be as degenerate, but it's definitely still a degenerate playstyle that can very quickly get out of hand because it's sharing the same tuning as the base spec. And like I think they're adding this as like that alternative for mages who don't like the Glacial Spike playstyle and they want their 2-finger rotation back. But I do not think this is the route they should go with it, just because of the implications it can have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the Shadowlands experience with Deathborn and Perma Icy Veins, the context was so massively different because you were always under CDs during that time. I think the fact that Frost actually has a cooldown window now, and let's be real here, when you blow cooldowns, you need to be able to guarantee your damage, right? It's going to be really hard, I think, for Frost to guarantee its damage when it's spamming Frostbolt. You know, a hard cast, especially as Spellslinger, where you don't get any instant procs, right? I think that's perhaps a major problem here, especially when you compare it to Fire and Arcane, who are more or less going to be practically fully mobile during CDs in the War Within. I think that's going to be kind of a hard point in raids, at least, right? Where you have mechanical overlaps where you need to CD and take care of business. And I think spamming Frostbolt's really hard to do. Even, right, like Icy Flows does nothing for Frostbolt. You run through the charges instantly. So to me, I see that problem.
Yeah. Sort of. The thing is, at least how it was in Shadowlands, like you ignore like your other spells, but it also means that whenever you need to move, you have like flurries and ice lances like sitting there, like ready to go. Which has always been like a sort of plus of like no ice lance frost. But yeah, I do see what you're saying.
Yeah, again though, like in Shadowlands, right, you were always under CDs, so you kind of always had those banked up. Whereas with this, you're probably not going to bank those between Icy Veins CDs uses, right? So you might it might not even be optimal for you to keep those set aside for movement during your Icy Veins window. Maybe not, though.
No, but you'll get enough during Icy Veins. Like, I'm not saying bank them between Icy Veins, but like,
Yeah.
Even if you go like 5 seconds in Icy Veins with just casting Frostbolt, you'll probably have 2 fingers of frost and at least a flurry during that time. If you're like,
yeah, well, you get a flurry too from just using it, right?
Yeah. Do you? What do you mean? Oh yeah, you mean using Icy Veins? Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thought you meant there's something else down here.
There probably could be. The tree's so passive you wouldn't notice it, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I was saying the other big change was in the class tree.
Yes, I was going to say, do we just want to finish with small class tree changes? Well, small changes, but maybe large impact. So the 2 talents that were here, Ice Nova's moved, and then the slow mass... Was it mass slow? Yeah, mass slow. I've never spec'd into slow or mass slow this expansion. They're gone. Well, Ice Nova has moved over here, so it's now a choice node with Ring of Frost. And then Dragon's Breath and Supernova are now a choice node here. And we have this new talent in the place of Dragon's Breath that says whenever one of your barriers is removed, reduce its cooldown. Very good.
For those of you who don't know, Supernova was formerly in the Arcane tree, and it's a spell that I don't believe has ever been picked in PvE since it was placed there.
Right, Porum, you're up. You asked for this. You have to elaborate on this one.
Oh yeah, it likely won't be picked even still because one of the major misses with it, right, is that it's up against Dragon's Breath. That's definitely our best stop as a mage, and so it's going to be a hard sell to actually pick that. I think as Sun Fury, the argument there is certainly there for Arcane, because you get extra damage on the lapse from your mastery and enlightened. And for Spellslinger, I think the argument might be there for unerring proficiency. But I think in a general sense, I don't think it's going to change anything. I don't think Fire and Frost are going to use Supernova at all, right? I think if anyone does, it'll be Arcane, and probably only Arcane.
Yeah, so Fire won't pick it because we have Alexstrasza's Fury, which means Dragon's Breath is a DPS cooldown for us. It can generate a heating up. For Frost, at least in like the Frostfire tree, you're getting that 30% reduction on your fire spells. So you're going to want that Dragon's Breath because it's 30% reduced cooldown, which doesn't apply to your Supernova. So yeah, I think it's just a really, really poor place to put it as a choice node. I would love to see it somewhere else in the class tree, but I don't think that's it.
I think against Blast Wave makes the most sense, and they're both a similar type of spell, and I think people would be happy to have an alternative stop like Blast Wave that doesn't actually move the position of the mobs, right? Keeps them grouped up and neat.
See, okay, I actually do disagree with you on this one, which is interesting. So, you're right, Dragon's Breath is basically better. The Supernova's 40-yard range, and Dragon's Breath is melee. So, like, Dragon's Breath has to be better in basically every other way, or at least in enough other ways. So, like, there's definitely been Mythic Plus seasons or certain scenarios where Dragon's Breath being melee, a melee stop is quite painful. Like, a pretty reliable, like, an instant stop on a decent cooldown that's like your max 40-yard range, I think is good enough that I don't see this being the primary pick, but I would think it would get picked sometimes. But maybe
I could see that as like a niche pickup, like for example in Nel's Lair where you have the pelters that have like a 30-yard range or something like that on their throw. You could just stand out of range and still have a stop offering. So I could definitely see that.
Yeah, my main concern is just what you guys were saying about, like, if you look at these two base, so like 45-second stop, one's melee but does more damage and has a few synergies, and one's ranged, but there's probably too much synergy with Dragon's Breath once you start thinking about like the Frostfire tree and things like that.
And like time manipulation, reducing the cooldown on it for fire pretty heavily. Like every time you fire blast, you're reducing the cooldown on your Dragon's Breath. That's a really big bonus for it.
Yeah, and time manipulation doesn't work with Supernova either. It's not whitelisted as part of that spell.
They that feels like something they should fix now that it's in the class tree. Like, I don't think there's a reason for that to be.
I mean, they probably should have fixed it before. They even upped the cooldown of Supernova. It used to be 25 seconds in the Arcane tree, and now it's 45 for parity with Dragon's Breath.
Yeah, I imagine this is just something they forgot about. So we're telling you now, Blizzard. You have 40
Probably,
hours.
yeah.
And then the other big change.
Oh, where's the other big change? What have I forgot?
Ring of Frost and
Supernova.
Ice Nova.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's been a while
This
since
is
I've
the
used
big
Ring of
change.
Frost, I'm not going to lie.
This is a big change on a lot of levels. So I think for Frost Mages, it's probably the most detrimental change for PvE, right? Because you use Ice Nova rotationally. I think early expansion, Ice Nova was really good. It's not damage capped. It hits pretty hard for the cast time when your stats are lower, right? Like in Vadi, we used it as rotationally, right? In AoE. However, that kind of gets outpaced eventually. The really bad thing for I think Mythic Plus players who play Frost is Ring of Frost is really useful, right? It stops charges. It's an extra stop. You can even use it as like recovery tool when wipes are about to go down, right? I've used Ring of Frost as a kiting tool. It's definitely going to be a store point, I think, for Frost Mages losing that.
Good against Spiteful?
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, Spiteful in like last season and plus like Everbloom and Atal'Dazar with all those like berserkers constantly charging you, having that Ring of Frost was very helpful. But they're placing an AoE freeze, which Frost uses to shatter their glacials and whatever else against a utility spell. So you're choosing throughput essentially versus utility, and I think throughput always wins in that case.
It might be a hot take as well, but I almost feel like Ice Nova shouldn't exist. Like, it's a throughput spell, but it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be a throughput spell.
Well, I feel like it
You know?
shouldn't be a throughput spell for Frost, right? It should really just be like a ranged route, because for all three specs, in my opinion, that's kind of like what it's supposed to be. Frost just happens to benefit from the freezing aspect of it tremendously, right?
Yeah.
Even playing like Fire and Arcane, I do use Ice Nova pretty frequently in a Mythic Plus, like to stop those same charges I would use a ring for. But having both is like a super big, like benefit when you're the only range in the group because you're playing the meta comp and you're the one baiting all these charges. So having two ways of getting out of it is better than one. I don't really appreciate this choice node.
Yeah. Get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we do have a lot of Mythic Plus utility already.
We do, but I'm greedy.
Yeah.
I think the biggest nerf for this is probably for PvPers. The Dragon's Breath Ring of Frost combo is like set in stone. So that means Supernova, which also means Gravity Lapse, and Ice Nova are pretty much 0 pick rate in PvP, most likely with these changes. And so I think it's more of an implication for them than it is for PvEers, because we have allies in PvE that we can rely on to stop those charges, for example. That's something that we can coordinate with. In PvP, you have to be a bit more self-sufficient, and like I said, the DB Ring of Frost combo, that's something that I don't think you're going to drop in any situation.
Yeah, and the utility creep, like especially in PvP, has been like across the board. So you have demon hunters that are on you for 90% of the match, and Ice Nova was one of the ways you could get them off. Now PvPers are going to have to choose, and they're going to choose Ring.
Yeah. We'll see how it plays out.
The last thing in the class tree that is Frost specific is the loss of Temporal Warp. Means they are locked into Time Anomaly. For Frost specifically, they're getting that Icy Veins proc. When that proc happens, they do not get the Welly spawn. So a large chunk of their like throughput from Icy Veins is coming from that Welly, and they're not getting that. So there's a little bit of disparity there, because like Arcane, they get the full value of Surge no matter what. Arcane, we supposedly get the full value of Combustion, even though we end up hardcasting half of it. But Time Anomaly, not very Frost friendly.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst.
You go.
The worst thing about Time Anomaly is that the proc, Fingers of Frost, is pretty much useless. I think the sim I saw where we had Time Anomaly like only procking that or whatever was like 0.2% or something like that. It was embarrassingly low compared to a Fire Blast CDR or Clear Casting, which is like a really big proc, right? Fingers of Frost is basically a mobility tool.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, like, this talent has to be on a clock. Like, this talent only existed because you couldn't use Temporal Warp all of the time. Like, you needed something to go to if Temporal Warp was unusable, right? And we've got a choice node here where one of them never gets picked. So just delete this and move the Mass Invis out of the choice node. Okay, we might not always play it, but it'll find niche uses. Like, Time Anomaly doesn't need to exist.
Hear me out. Really, really good opportunity to put Cauterize in the class tree. I'm just saying, really good opportunity, Dave.
Yeah, I think Cauterize Prismatic Barrier would be probably one of the best utility or best choice nodes in the class tree to have an option of, right? You have a really strong active versus a really strong passive. I think it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, just to clarify, you mean like the DR that's on Prismatic Barrier. So like take the DR off Prismatic Barrier and have some talent here that's like Barrier reduces magic damage taken by 15%.
And then give Arcanes 5% physical or damage reduction. And give them, you know what I mean, something on their barrier to be unique from the Fire and Frost, but give that really powerful barrier as a juxtaposition against Cauterize.
Yep, do it, Dave. We're on our knees. Okay, we can probably wrap it up there since we said that we were going to do this quickly and it's been an hour and 10 minutes, so what can you do?
Yapper's gonna yap.
Okay, thank you very much for watching, everybody. I think we said we'll try and do these like 2 weeks instead of 1 week. Time slot TBD. Might try and find a better time slot, but we're not sure. But anyway, all of the episodes will be uploaded to my YouTube channel anyway. So, yeah.
And Spotify. Yeah. Doing the call out.
Yeah, they are on Spotify. Much slower than they're on YouTube because the Spotify uploader is a pain in the arse. But yeah, Spotify eventually. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching. See you in the next one.
Thanks for having us, too.
I can't